welcome to Pharicode on Air. I'm Lauren Jankowski, the Marketing Manager here at Pharicode, and I'll be moderating today's webinar, How to Fix Your ServiceNow Data with Background Scripts. Before we get started, I'd like to give you some background information on Pharicode. Pharicode is an elite ServiceNow partner that provides cutting-edge technology services, managed services, and staff augmentation to federal, state, and local government organizations. We're proud to have over 270 certifications, nearly 70,000 hours of services performed in partnerships with Microsoft, ServiceNow, Google, and many more. As a perk of attending today's webinar, we'll be giving away a $50 Visa gift card. We'll be announcing the winner at the very end of today's session, so make sure you stay on for the entire webinar. I'm excited to hand things over to our presenter for today, Michael Kaufman, a ServiceNow architect here at Pharicode. I'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout today's session, so please send in any questions as they arise, and we'll do our best to answer them. Michael, you can take it from here.
Today, we're going to be talking about background scripts, and these are the topics that we'll talk about today in the webinar. What are background scripts, their purpose and usage, precautions, preparation for safely using background scripts and related features, the background script utility itself, the components of it and the features of it, and some examples of how to use background scripts and scheduled jobs and fixed scripts, which are kind of related to background scripts. What are background scripts? Companies can have organizational changes, code changes, or even mistakes that require a large amount of data to be updated. There are just situations that require mass updates to ServiceNow data sometimes. What is a background script? A background script is a utility in ServiceNow to run scripts in the background, which is useful for mass create, update, and deletes of data. It is also gratefully helpful in troubleshooting records and running complex scripts to find information. Background scripts are very powerful and can execute complex operations in a short amount of time. Before you start considering to use a background script, there are other methods that you can use instead of background scripts. Like you can manually create and update records in ServiceNow like you normally do. You can use the list editor where you can use the hamburger button in the corner and update all. Or you could import data with a spreadsheet to create or update or delete records, or you could use something like the REST API. But in certain situations, those other methods might not be the most efficient way to update data. For example, it might not be feasible to use the list editor to update 200,000, millions, or even billions of records, or even make a CSV file to update the records. Sometimes a background script can be created in minutes that solves the issue. They save development time over the other methods. Precautions. Before we talk about how to write a background script, first we should talk about the danger. Background scripts are so powerful that you can cause major issues to your ServiceNow system with the right script. You need to be extra careful in running background scripts. I have personally seen data destroyed, access revoked, and system shut down from writing background scripts. Let's talk about a few of the precautions so you can tread lightly when you're writing them. Number one, you want to run background scripts first in your development or personal instance of ServiceNow. Don't run background scripts directly in production without any testing. That isn't the best advice to do that. You don't want to be running background scripts in production before you tested them. You can also spin up a different browser incognito mode to see the progress of a background script while you're running it. That's another little trick. So you have your one session in the browser where you're running your background script. You can have another session open. You can see how the background script is going while you're using it, and that way you can monitor the progress. That's a couple tricks for running it for the first time. And you always want to be kind of extra with your GS log, GS print statements, and commenting out updates. For example, later in the webinar, you'll you should use those type of statements to see the results of your queries before you actually run the script. You also want to comment out your insert, update, or delete statement until you're actually sure it's correct before you just accidentally update 100,000 records and you didn't mean to. So you got to really, by putting in print statements and log statements, you can see, yes, that is the 100,000 I wanted to update. I didn't, you don't want to accidentally update 1 million when you wanted to update 100,000. Number 3, set workflow false and auto sys fields false. So when you're writing a glide record query, you can add these parameters, these function calls to yours before you execute the glide record query. And by adding the set workflow false, it doesn't run business rules. And sometimes you'd want business rules to run, but if you don't run the business rules, your script will run a lot faster. Other times you want to update a field and you don't want it to be detected that you're running a background script, so the set workflow false helps with that too. The auto sys field's false. When you run that, it doesn't put your name, like the administrator that you run the script on all the updates that you did the records. Me personally, I don't really want to have my name on all the incident tickets that I updated them last, for example. I like to be popular, but not infamous myself. So using the set auto sys fields false statement, you don't have your name on everything you updated, which is nice. Number 4 is stopping the transactions. So before you start learning how to do big background scripts, you got to know how to stop them. In case all the other precautions failed, you should know how to stop the transaction that's executing if something starts to go sideways. And by stopping the transactions, you go to the all active transactions module, and you got to look for the right node that it's running on, and you want to kill that transaction rather than delete it. And there's documentation on the ServiceNow documentation site about that. But stopping the transaction is an important thing to know how to do before you start running these. It's good to be aware of it because when you start running this and you start running it and you want it to stop, it's really important to know how to stop it before you're like Googling how to do it real quick. Well, it'd be nice to know it beforehand. So with these things, you want to follow them, and you want to make sure that you put all the precautions you can before you start running a background script. Because even though they've added rollback features and other parts to rollbacks background scripts, you want to be as cautious as possible when you're running them because you don't really want to make a mistake. The background script form. So this is what the background script form looks like. So of course, there's the run button, which runs the script, and there's the script area where you paste the script. The script itself isn't formatted like a business rule or anything like that. It doesn't have formatting in it, which is kind of a negative, but you can just paste it in there, which is kind of nice. It has a scope selector that you can select your scope for it. Now these are only, when you select the scope, background script, the scope selector only applies to applications that you created, not applications from that ServiceNow has or things like that. So if you want to run something against a scope that something ServiceNow created, you'd have to run it in a scheduled job instead or something like that. So when you look at the scope field, you're like, well, that's for all the scopes. Well, no, that's only for something, application that you created. The other options, record for rollback. That's something, this is a relatively new feature that captures database updates and insertions. So it gives you a rollback. You can, like, you make a mistake and you want to roll back. You don't want to rely on this at all, but it is a helpful thing that you could use. The next one, execute in sandbox. This runs a script with restricted rights, and this you could do this to test something out. I personally don't use this because I just use comments and other things to protect myself, but that's something that you might be interested in using. The cancel after 4 hours, that's nice to have if you're not sure that it shouldn't take more than 4 hours, but there are scripts that would take over 4 hours if you're running something really large. However, then you might want to consider breaking up your scripts into smaller chunks or using alternative methods, which I'll talk about some in this webinar. But there are times you want to uncheck that, but for the most part, if it's running more than 4 hours, you should break up your script into smaller scripts so it doesn't take that long. So let's look at a background script and one of the most common things that you would do when you're writing a background script. So this is what you would paste into that script area of the background script. And we're going to start with a simple glide record query. And we'll talk about the code and we'll talk about the script line by line. So if we look at the first line and the last line, that's called a self-executing anonymous function, which encapsulates the code. You don't have to put your code in a function to run it in a background script, but it's best practice to do so. You can also use just a regular function that you're used to writing in JavaScript. You can call the function as well, but the self-executing anonymous function does save you a line of code, and it's just a common practice thing that people have been doing. You don't have to worry about coming up with a new function name every time, and it's always good to put everything in a function. There are reasons behind it, but if you just always put in a function, you're better off. So that's this line here, and then this line at line number 10. Line number 2. So this is a glide record query. That's what we're going to be doing here. Why it's called glide record is ServiceNow used to be called GlideSoft in 2003, and then it was changed to ServiceNow.com in 2006. The sister company of Pharicode is named GlideFast after glide record queries. So glide records I've probably done probably 10,000 glide record queries. I've wrote this so many times. If you're used to syntax methods, you can type var gr and it will automatically start you with a fresh glide record query. So that's a little tip too. But that's how you initialize the glide record query. So this one, we're going to call the incident table. So we said we call an object of gr instant, and we're going to initialize against the table instant. And then we add queries to query against that table. So on line 3 and 4, we're querying the incident table, and we're querying for priority 5 incident, where the category is inquiry. And then we're only going to pull back 1 with the set limit. Now you don't have to use set limit, but if you pulled back, this actually improves performance in that when you do the if statement here, it didn't pull back 1,000, it only pulled back 1. So using the set limit is something you don't have to use, but it does improve performance. And then here, this is where you do the if statement. And here, see, we're doing an if gr instant is next. And I'm going to print this to the screen. Incident found, incident number. So here we're going to only find one of these incidents of this type. If we didn't have this line 5, and we said instead of if, we said while, it would print out to the screen all the incidents that have priority and category of inquiry. So sometimes when you're writing a glide record query, sometimes you'll use if you want to get 1, use a while statement if you want to pull back all of them. And you only use that set limit deal as if you want to only pull back 1 or you want to pull back 10 or that type of thing. So you can adjust these queries to fit your needs about what you want to pull. And then once I'm just printing this to screen, but you can do updates, you can update fields, you can update data within the if statement here. So Now, another thing that I forgot to mention is this line 6, which I kind of skimmed over. This executes the query. Now, if you forget to put this line in here, this gr incident query, or you forget the parentheses, and you go to run this if gr incident next, nothing will happen. You won't get anything back because it didn't really execute anything. So you got to always remember this line 6. I forget it all the time. And then I'm like, why didn't it work? Well, I forgot that line number 6. So let's run this one and see if it works. So I'll copy it here, and let's find this one. I got it at the top. It's just the code for the demo today. Okay, and I'll pull up ServiceNow, and I'll click it. So we just paste it in there. So before we run it, we kind of don't want to just click run script willy-nilly. We want to be careful. So we look at it and we say, okay, we're not doing any updates. Everything looks good. Yeah, it looks good. And then we hit run script, and it found one. Okay, good. So if we wanted to find more, we could comment out this line here and see how many it finds if we change this to a while. And we run script. Oh, it found all these ones. So that's kind of what I was talking about when you write these scripts. And updating data and finding data and deleting data is what background scripts are all about. So this is a common thing that you would do. Okay, back to this one. Let's go to the next slide. So there's another script. And now we're going to take what we learned about the last one and see what happens when we do things wrong. So when you're writing these, you are going to make mistakes. And by putting the precautions in, what I talked about earlier, you can prevent yourself from making a big mistake. So as part of this one, I have all these lines of code, but I added a print statement below the query where I can see what the query is that I'm running and how many it returns. And then also I comment out the CI update down here, so it doesn't actually update the CI, and I won't update the CI until I'm ready. So I'll run this code, and I can check to make sure with this print statement that it's actually going to do what I want it to do before I actually run it. And I'm also using the set workflow false and auto sys fields false part, where I'm turning off the business rules, not updating the last updated and the updated time. I'm turning those off. That's good to know. And I'm also using a set value to set asset tag to Pharicode. I'm just setting a field. You can use grci.asset tag equals Pharicode, but that's a whole different debate and topic. But let's run this code and see what happens when it works. Okay, let's pull it up here. Let's go the next one. Let's see what happens. Okay, and I paste it in here. So I look it through here. Before I run it, I'm extra careful. I got my update statement off, so that's commented out, so I'm good there. Now I run the code. Oh no, I got all kinds of errors. So my script must have problems. I must not have wrote something. So let's look at the first line. Invalid query detected. Please check logs for details. Unknown field sys name in table CI. Well, I made a mistake there. It's not really supposed to be sys name. It's supposed to be name. So that would be my first mistake. So let me fix that. So I'll change it to name. Oh, all right. I fixed that. Let's run it again. Oh, so there's my line that I put a print statement in there. grci query name is equal to sap w3 equals 0. Why is it equaling 0? It should equal more than 0. There should be at least one CI that I want to update. Okay, let me look here. Oh, I got my query line, but I forgot to put the parentheses at the end. I forgot to do that. All right. See, these are common things that you would do where you actually forgot to do these things. So, all right. Oh, now I get 1. That's what I wanted to happen. So my query, that was my query that I did, and it's equaling 1 returned. All right. So that's what I was looking for. Okay. So now I'm in my while statement, and that all looks good. And I'm in my dev instance. I'm not in a production. Don't go in production. And I'll tell you what this does too. I'll tell you what that little statement does. So let me comment this out. So now I'm ready to update it. Oh, so it ran update, and I think so let's go find that CI. Let's see if we actually updated it. What was it? SAP web 03. This screen, here's another trick too. Like if you're looking at a form and you can't tell, you don't see the field that you want to see, you can just go to show XML and you can see the asset tag there. Yeah, it was updated. So it changed it to Pharicode. Now, if I go to this screen here, I could add the asset tag too, which is a little trick. There you go. Yep. So our script worked. Ta-da! All right. So that other, now if I go back to my script's background, and then I have this comment here that I was going to talk about. So there's a system property that ServiceNow's added over the years, and that controls how invalid glide record queries are handled. When that property is true, invalid queries always return no rows. So that's kind of a preventive system property that you can add. I just put it in there as a comment so you know about it. But that's like, so if we made a bad query up here in our add query deal, like we accidentally said, you know, sysname like we had before or something like that, we did it incorrectly. It would return no rows, so you wouldn't accidentally update all data. I remember one time I wrote a query for updating users, and I was only going to lock out some users that weren't admins on the dev instance. Well, my query was wrong when I was doing the query, and I ended up locking out all the users. Now, since then, ServiceNow has prevented that by adding security features like that, like kind of helpful things to prevent you doing that. And that was also before I knew about adding the print statements like this line here. So I was a lot less cautious when I was younger because I didn't know about these things. But now, if you follow steps like that, like you put a print statement in, you comment out this before you actually run it, you can make sure you're actually updating what you want to update. You can also put all kinds of other GS print statements in here. You could say, like in the while, you could print out the CI serial number or the asset tag. You could see what you're updating is the actual thing. So you want to make sure you're doing that because you don't want to accidentally update these background scripts. You update all kinds of records, and you don't accidentally want to update something you didn't intend on. I've said that a lot of times, and it's really important to know. You don't want to make that mistake. So, but you can also get a lot done. Like sometimes when you want to update millions of records, you can't do it by just manually doing it. Well, you could, but you'd be there for hours and hours and hours. So I think we covered everything here. Yes, we did. So this one we were just talking about script issues. We talked about here, we made a mistake on this line and we took out the sys part. And here we forgot to put parentheses on the query, so it didn't work right. You could also forget this line and you'd have the same result. So it's good to realize that you can make mistakes when you're writing these, but having print statements like this and commenting out your update before you actually run it prevents you from making a bigger mistake. So my next example is script includes. So you can call, like you can start building background scripts that are really large. Like you could have a background script that took up hundreds and hundreds of lines. Well, if you tell somebody, well, just paste this massive script into the background script thing in production and run it. Well, it's kind of intimidating for a technician to have to paste that complicated script right into the script area. It's better if you write a script include like this one, and you call the script include from the background script. For this example, we're going to set some incident groups, and we're calling the script include called webinar util, and then and that's how we call the script. And in here, this is what the script include would look like. Up here's the background script, and here's the script include. And here we have one function that we got in the script include, set incident groups. And that goes through the incident table. It's using an encoded query, which is active equals true, and the assignment group is equal to null, so that you're looking for all the active incidents without assignment group. And we're querying, and then we print out the log statement, and we cycle through all the incidents, and we are going to set the assignment group to the service desk. So this could be something that happened, like maybe you had a huge number of incidents get created accidentally, and you want to get them updated to a certain group. Now, this is one way to do that. I'm just showing an example of how to use a script include, but yeah. So let's try this one. So pull up the code here. Script include this one here. Okay. So let's look at the script include first. We just go to script includes, and a script include is just a library of code that you can call over and over again. So in here, this is what I was showing you earlier. As soon as it loads, there we go. Here we got that function. You might notice that I got the actual update call. I got that commented out, and we got a log statement in here. So if we run this script include, everything's going to be okay. We're not actually updating any incident tickets. We're doing this in our development environment. So we're going to be all right. Or we could do it in our personal dev, place is safe. That give yourself outs. So if you make a mistake, you can get out of this situation. so yeah. So let's go to the script's background utility again. Sometimes I like to open it up in another tab. So I've got one open here, and I go this. Like if you control click, it opens up in another tab. So we're just going to call this one. We're just going to double check one more time. It's commented out. Okay, we're all good. Okay. All right. So this is that GS print statement from this line here. So we're saying, we said, this is the script include. So we were able to call the script include, so that worked. And we're calling the function set incident groups. And we're doing the query, incident query. We're doing active equals true. And assignment group is null is equal to 17. Well, this all looks good. Now you might decide that you want to run the business rules because you might want to kick off an SLA or something. If you have set workflow false on, it might not kick off the SLA. It might not run a certain business rule that you want when the assignment group is set. But for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to leave that off. But we're going to comment out this GR incident update, and then we'll see if this actually works. So let's do that, and I'll save it. And then we go back to our business rule. And if you click the back button, it keeps your JavaScript that you had from before. So we're going to run this. And then this is that rollback feature that we talked about earlier. It tells me that it updated 17 instance. Okay, let's click it and take a look. It updated these ones right here. So if I go to one of them, and I think I set it to the service desk, I believe that was our intent. It's set to the service desk. Ta-da! So that worked good. Now the reasons why we would use a script include to call it from the background script is a a script include is reusable and searchable. You can keep your background scripts in a library so you can use them over and over again. It makes your production and deployment area easier. You can paste that simple function call rather than this whole big script here. And it looks more professional as opposed to having that giant code that you would paste into it. Let's go to the next one. Scheduled job. So a scheduled job is very similar to a background script, but you can have it on a schedule or you can execute now. But the nice thing about it is that you can use that scheduled job more often, rather than when you're using a business rule, like we were in here before, like we run this business rule and the code is, once we ran this code, you know, it's not saved anywhere or anything. So putting in a scheduled job is kind of nice in that you can have it in there. So say we wanted to run this more frequently. We wanted to run this code on a schedule. Well, you can't really do that in a background script. But if you go to scheduled jobs and you go here, you make a new one. And we're going to do automatically run a script of your choosing. And we're going to say incident assignment group update. And we're going to have that run daily at 8 a.m., maybe 1 a.m. And we paste our script in here. And then it will run every day at 1 in the morning. So maybe that is something you want to do, you know. And it might not necessarily be set in the assignment groups that you want to do. Maybe you want to set a field or do such a thing. Well, that's how you can use a scheduled script to do that. It's the same thing as a background script pretty much, except you can have it in this area and it's saved. If you want to put the scheduled script in a update set, you can use that add to update set utility or things like that. But that's scheduled scripts. And the one example that I have here is here I'm running a scheduled job to deactivate unused locations. Now we're in purpose of this script include here. We're saying unused locations are locations that don't have users tied to them, that don't have tasks tied to them. And if they don't have users or tasks to them, it sets a flag in the location to set them the active flag to false. There isn't an active flag on locations out of the box, but sometimes you end up with a bunch of locations you're not really using anymore. You want to clean them up and you're not sure what ones are safe to get rid of. This one helps you do that. So that's an example. I'm going to kind of skip the running it, but just know that running scheduled jobs is just like background scripts, but you can schedule them. You can put them in an update set. You can, they're more reusable. Like in this scheduled job that we were looking at, I got it run on a schedule, but you can also have it be run on demand. And then once I save it here, you can just click execute now whenever you want to run this scheduled job. So you might have things that you want to run just once, or you might want to have them run more than once. But scheduled scripts are kind of like an extension of background scripts, and it's just another way to do background scripts, but on schedule or on demand. Next one, fixed scripts. So fixed scripts are something that came along in ServiceNow later, and fixed scripts are like scheduled jobs, and they're like background scripts. You still have the same script area. So like if we look at a fixed script here, like here I got a user insert fixed script, and here I'm initializing the sys user table, and I'm going to insert Mike Kaufman into the user table. And to run it, there's a bunch of options here, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's a bunch, we're just going to talk about that after we run it. We'll just run it for fun. And I'm looking at it one more time. This all looks good to me. Got to be real careful. Looks good. I'm just inserting one record. I don't got a while loop. Everything looks good. Real careful. Running this in dev. Yeah. Run. I'm going to, like, if you got a really big fixed script, you might not want to click proceed like that. You might want to proceed in the background. And we're just going to click proceed. Yeah. And it did that. And now if I go to the user table, there I am. Oh, good. That's good to know. And so there it worked. Now, what are all these fields on the fixed script? So a fixed script is like a scheduled job or a background script that it's server-side JavaScript code that you run after. You can have this run after an application is installed or upgraded, but you can also use fixed scripts and put them in an update set to push them to production. They don't run automatically unless you do some things to make them run automatically, but you can have them included in update set. You can commit your update set and run the fixed script afterwards. It's kind of nice if you work at a company where someone else executes the fixed script for you and you're not able to run it. You can have it, all they got to do is go into the fixed script and click run fixed script. It's simple for them to execute it. Fixed scripts, administrators and users with the script fix admin role can create and run fixed scripts, mostly administrators. You can also have fixed scripts run when app is installed or upgraded. I think I said that. Now let's talk about the fields on there. So there's an unloadable checkbox, and that means when you got that checked, when you have a fixed script running, it takes the records that were updated when the fixed script runs, and it adds them to the sys update XML record when you run them. So like you say you want a bunch of departments as part of your update set. I don't know if that's the best thing, but if you want them in there, you run this and it puts them in your update set. Run once, that means you only want it to run once. You don't want it to run for subsequent upgrades. I usually check this all the time because most of the fixed scripts I'm running are just to fix something wrong in production. And I usually just have it run once. You can have it flush the cache after the application installed or upgraded. Sometimes you do need to flush the cache. Instead of doing cache.do to flush the cache, you can have it checked to do that. And then, especially if you're using something like a client script or a UI policy or something like that, flushing the cache is needed. And then, and you can also have this before checkbox checked, and you can check that box to have it run before installing or upgrading the application. I think most of the time you're running it after, but it depends on your situation. But yeah, most of the time, like I've been writing them just for doing updates in production. But if you're making apps, like here, I'm in the global application. But if you look at some of these fixed scripts that are out of the box, we look at them all. There's here, I'll add the application here. There's a lot of examples of this stuff in here. If I filter out, well, I might have only, yeah, okay. So like I got vulnerability response installed, and these were the fixed scripts that ServiceNow wrote for vulnerability response. Like when we click on one of these, yeah, you can see they wrote something for vulnerability response to set some stuff in the vulnerability grouping rule table. So it's similar to what I just showed you, except it's bigger. You know, I tried to keep it simple to not get too complicated in the webinar, but you can write any kind of complicated script that you want, and you can put it in a fixed script, and then you can run it on the destination instance. So yeah, so Q&A. So let's see, how do I do the questions?
Oh, I can read them to you.
Okay.
They come in. So someone did comment when you were talking about the history of Glide Record that they love the history of the name. So thanks for talking about that. Here's a question. How can I learn more about writing JavaScript in ServiceNow?
Oh, okay. So you can attend webinars like this. You can sign up for an account in developer.servicenow.com where you can get your own ServiceNow instance. And they got some helpful tutorials about how to write code. Like when I was showing the example with the fix scripts, you can see all the examples within the tool itself. There's, hundreds of business rules. There's hundreds of fix scripts. There's a lot of examples in there. Sometimes people ask me if I should take a JavaScript course on the internet, and that does help, but learning the ServiceNow flavor of scripting is helpful. So if you start writing, like you get your own personal instance and you start writing little scripts to update things and delete things and update and insert things, you can learn a little bit about scripting right there. And before you know it, you'll be self-taught, just like me. So I didn't go to a class or anything else. I just jumped into ServiceNow and learned how to do it. But that's because once you look at all the examples, there's so many examples of how to do things, you can learn quite a bit. And if if you do have like a mentor or something that's already doing ServiceNow, that's always helpful. You can bother them for all those type of questions all the time. And the community, you can ask questions there. So there's all kinds of ways to learn how to write JavaScript out there.
Awesome. Here's another question. Should I write background scripts, schedule jobs, or fix scripts?
I like to write background scripts when I'm making a smaller update. Scheduled jobs are for something that will take much longer, and maybe I want to run the code frequently. Fix scripts are when I'm making an application or I want to move the fix script to production and update set for somebody else to run. Fix scripts are like the new thing that I've been using a lot more, but there's a case for each different type there where you might want to run one of those. So yeah.
Awesome. And then I also see someone saying, I believe ServiceNow does have a scripting for ServiceNow course. That is correct. And I know Pharicode and their sister company, GlideFast, is a certified training partner. So we do offer that course as well. So if you are interested, definitely reach out to us and we can help you out with that and get you registered.
Yeah. And I would say that if you did a little bit of learning on scripting on your own, and then you went to the course is real valuable then, because you have questions for the instructor and some of those things you never understood, like the query line. What does that mean? You never really got it. When you go to the scripting course, you can ask the instructor, what does that really mean? And then it would help you with there too. But that is a really important class, yeah.
Awesome. And here's a question. Is there any performance difference between adding queries one by one, using multiple add query, and adding a single encoded query?
Now, there's a use case for both types. I like to use add query when I'm doing something simple and I'm calling a variable or something. Encoded query, sometimes where you can just copy the filter that you're using and paste it in as encoded query. That's just easier. I don't believe that there's a tremendous amount of performance difference of how you write them, because as you notice when I did the print statement, it all comes out like an encoded query when you run it. So when it runs, it is all an encoded query when it's run. But doing the add queries just compile that query that you're going to use. You should write queries that you understand and you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with using add query, use that. If you like using encoded query, use that. But you should, if you don't understand, like when you're looking at the encoded query, it can get pretty complicated. And sometimes doing an add query is just easier to navigate. Yeah, I guess that's the best answer.
Awesome. Yeah, good answer. Well, that looks like that is all the questions that we have. So I'd like to move on and announce the winner of our $50 Visa gift card. And it looks like the winner is Michael Schraw. Congratulations, Michael. We'll be emailing you your prize directly with the email that you signed up for this webinar on. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us on our website, social media, or at info@pharicode.com. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.